I could go back and make things right, I would have it undone. No, I hurt you. Yeah, I was blind. The blame is mine. Yeah, I feel the weight on my shoulders. Know that I regret it. Hope I can repay you for what I've done. Know that I regret it. Hope we find our way back to love. 'Cause it's you and me. Yeah, we fought, but we tried to make everything better. You and me, we work everything out. No one can love me better than you. Than you. Than you. No one can love me better than you. Than you. Than you. No one can love me better. Can we talk it out? Make things right. I can feel us growing colder. I made my bed. Yeah, I'm not proud. It was just a mistake. You should know that. I really do regret it. Hope I can repay you for what I've done. Whoa, know that I regret it. Hope we find our way back to love. 'Cause it's Let's make a run together, I'll be by your side before we collide. And if the sky falls down on you, just beat it up before we collide. Let's make it last forever, I'm ready to fly before we collide. And when the sun don't shine on you, just heat it up before we collide. Let's make a run together, I'll be by your side before we collide. And if the sky falls down on you, just beat it up before we collide. Let's make it last forever, I'm ready to fly before we collide. And when the sun don't shine on you, just heat it up before we collide.
After 3 weeks of not being here live, it's great to finally hear that song again, and great to see all of you live at TechCon Live every Saturday. Well, apart from the last 3 weeks, I am live at this particular time, and we geek out on all kinds of production, video productions and audio productions, setups, and learning from each other, etc., etc. And we have a fantastic audience. The last 3 weeks, I was in the States for work, but also for some leisure. Started out in San Diego, then went to Connecticut, and last but not least, I went to upstate New York to visit some friends where I actually lived as a kid. So, well, there you go. next week we're going to dive a little bit more into that whole 3 weeks thing. I want to go as quickly as I can because I have a special guest. But before I reveal the special guest, I want to, of course, say hi to the people that are live on the Saturday. And that is, of course, about 5 hours ago, MT was in the house. He was already saying that he was really happy, and it was the sun was shining, and that is definitely the case here in Europe. Raoul is also in the house. Welcome. Appreciate you for being here. I just saw Eric also coming in right there. Long time no see, indeed. Long time no see, and it was indeed good to be back. Let me see. I also see Geert all the way from Belgium. Welcome. Let me see if there are any other people. Gerard, also, of course, from Stuttgart in Germany. Frankie is in the house. Welcome from Waterford, Ireland. Really cool of you to be here. Niels is in the house. Welcome. And I think then that brought me to the special guest of today. And that is, Joey. So welcome, Joe DeMax from Central Control. How are you?
All good. Delighted to be here. Literally less than 24 hours, I think. Maybe actually just exactly 24 hours since we shipped our new version. First interview.
Well, there you go. So I think that this was not by design, but really good to have this period of talking to you. Indeed, a new version of Central Control. We're definitely going to talk about that. But first, maybe a quick introduction, Joe. Who are you?
Who am I? Wow. Where to start with that question? I guess I've been doing live streaming for about half my life. Production in some way. I've been a lighting engineer as well, video, VJ, all that stuff. And I was kind of a full-time Lampy VJ in 2020, and I lost all my work very, very quickly, as I'm sure I don't need to tell you why.
No.
And with all this time, lockdown in the house, I thought I would put together this. I'd always toyed around with programming, put together little tools to do, connect this to that or this to the other. And I thought there might be some value if, rather than doing all these separate little programs, if I could make this modular application that essentially allowed you to connect anything to anything. And that's essentially what Central Control became initially. And since then, it's kind of just kept growing into this monster of it does everything, really.
Yeah. Well, I think that you did a great job. Of course, I have been using it secretly in the back end here as well. But definitely a great piece of software. And you already told a little bit about how it came to be. I think that we all know what happened, and it was a dreadful time for a lot of people. But was there one specific use case that really said, okay, now I need to really start to invest time in Central Control? Or was it just it just started automatically?
I'd had the idea in my head for some time, and I knew I wanted to build it, and I just didn't have any time to do it. And I think it was just I myself was getting back into live streaming after having a long break from it. It was kind of the COVID pandemic that brought me back into it massively. And I was like, after maybe a 6-year break, I was getting back into it, and it was like, oh, I need to connect this X keys to this, or I want to use a Stream Deck and some kind of MIDI controller with my TriCast to control the audio levels. And like, I'd known about these issues since, like, from when I was around before, but to my shock, no one had solved them yet. So I thought, I may as well throw my hat into the ring and see if I could be the one to tackle them.
Okay, that's interesting. So now we know that what Central Control is, but of course, it's maybe good to start very easy, like just a brief overview on what it can do. Maybe you can give a small demo on that. Of course, we will talk about specifically the new 3.1 features that you just released less than 24 hours ago. So it's really hot off the needle, so to speak. And I'm actually really looking forward to one or two features. Of course, you know which ones already. I did prepare you a little bit up front for that, but I will give you the floor to give us a bit of a demo on what people can expect if it goes into central control.
With pleasure. So let's dissolve. There we go. So what have I got to show us today? I've brought along one of my favorite pieces of equipment that I own. It's an X-Keys 124 T-bar. Customize it a little bit, as you can do with these.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to map it to vMix. Well, you can already do that. Of course you can. There's even a template.
Yeah.
But actually, on this show, I actually have decided that I also need to run some stuff on an ATEM. Is that a problem? No, it's not. So so this is the main central control window. And you can see all these blocks in my project. It's a very modular application. So when you start it for the first time, this is blank, and there's just this add device button. What a device is anything in your production that you might need to use as a controller, or you might need to control. So I've got all this stuff here, which we'll be looking at later in the show. But for now, just imagine it is blank, and we're just going to add some modules to the project. We've already got the ATEM in vMix, actually. So all we'll do is we're going to add the X-Keys device to the project. So I'm going to click this Add Device button, and you can kind of get a feel for how much stuff we actually do support. Just by looking at this list, there's loads of stuff listed as central control, which is mainly my crazy ideas. That's where they live. And we'll go down to PI Engineering, and we're going to add the 124 T-bar to the project. And all I'm going to do is I can enable this device. Now, see this icon is blinking to show it's receiving my control input. And now I'm going to just give you a really quick demo of how I would go about mapping the buttons on this control surface to commands on vMix and on ATEM. And one of the things we really pride ourselves on is the speed that you can get this up and running. So I'm going to demonstrate how quickly I can map. I'm going to map, let's say, we'll have the preview row for vMix here. We could have the program row for vMix here. And then maybe we're going to have preview for the ATEM here and program for the ATEM here. Make sense?
Yes, for me it is. Oh, by the way, just a quick reminder, if you have any questions, please write them down in the comments, both on Facebook and on YouTube. If there are any questions, I will be mentioning it during the demo or right after the demo. So feel free to ask questions.
Cool, perfect. So I'm minimize vMix for just a moment. So this is the mapping window. This is where you do all your control assignment. So it also conveniently has this jump to control toggle. And what that lets me do is, if I don't know the button I'm looking for, I can simply enable this. And as soon as I, let me see, show you. As soon as I press a button, it will essentially jump to that position in this list, so I can very easily identify my controls. So that's wonderful. Let's go back to this double shot. So I'm going to really quickly, in the blink of an eye, I'm going to map these two rows. They are 12 buttons long, 12 inputs. So I can very quickly do this by, I'm going to multi-select them. I'm going to hold the Shift key down. I've selected all those buttons. This is my preview row for vMix, as we said. This is where I select the device I want to control. This list is all the devices that I've got in my project. I'm going to select vMix, and I'm going to find the command I want to use, which in this case will do setMix preview. And this is where the speed comes into it. I'm going to right-click this, assign commands, and it has gone along that whole list of buttons that I had selected, assigned the command, but what it's done is, I don't know if you can read that, but it's automatically bumped up the input number by 1 every time we mapped a button. So we'll do the exact same thing for program. I'm going to drop this back down to 1. That's vMix done. And now we'll do the ATEM. And I know I'm speeding through this. This is more a demo of the speed of it rather than a tutorial. We do have many tutorials.
Understood. Yeah, of course.
I'm going to do the same thing. Set preview row. We'll do select our first input. Now we'll go down to, shift key, assign. Done the exact same thing. It's incremented by 1 every time. And we'll do the same thing here. We're going to multi-select that. Set program. We'll go down to PTZ1. Assign. There it is. So now I'll go back to my 50/50. You can see from this bird dog here, if I start punching buttons here, I'm going to pull up vmix on this guy here. You can see that is punching the preview row, as we would expect. This is doing program. And to prove that the ATEM stuff is working, I can just simply open the ATEM software control panel. There it is. There it is. I've got preview and program for both switches. And I think I have mapped pretty much most of what I'd need for the panel in, 2 minutes there. Of course, there's maybe extra stuff I'd want to do, maybe the T-bar, some take and auto buttons, but you kind of get an idea for the speed of how much you can get stuff up and running in central control.
I did see a great question. I guess there's a template for the 2 MEs, are also one for the Mini Extreme, and maybe also other ATEM systems available. Yeah.
So the ATEM module works with, because we're actually using the official Blackmagic SDK to make this happen. Any ATEM released, historically or in the future, will just work with central control. There's no templates as such. You do have to assign the controls, the commands yourself. But I think just from that demo, you can kind of see how quick and easy that is. So yes, you can use the 2ME. Yes, you can use the Extreme ISO. Yeah. No problems.
Excellent work, I think. I also see that people are quite interested, and I think it's really nice. Eric, for example, says nice select and assign with incrementing. What that is fast, and roughly the same remark. Very fast and less tedious, indeed. I see DJ Ware say, I thought that Joe was familiar. I remember him from the Studio Tech days. Is that the case? Studio Tech days?
Same Jodo Max. I don't think there's another one in the world nor the video production industry. So yes, that would be me. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, I watched that myself as well, but for some reason that was okay. Interesting.
About 10 years ago.
Yeah, a long time ago. Well, it was definitely very good streaming, and they were ahead of time. Definitely. So this was a quick demo, of course, of what you can do with central control. I think it was really nice. It really demonstrates how easy it is. I did have a quick question, of course. I know, but just for the sake of it, you now had that controller and immediately worked. But I assume that, for example, for vMix or for ATEM, you need to fill in the IP address somewhere to let it know where to find it. So maybe you could just briefly touch upon that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I will actually, because I already had the ATEM and the vMix in my project, so it probably didn't prove a lot there. But I can, if I go add an ATEM, you can see here, each of these modules has like parameters for different, the different information that they need to work. So in the case of the ATEM, it's just, okay, what's the IP address? And you punch that in, and that's how it knows where to connect. And the same goes for vMix. You can see, okay, what port, what's the IP address, how quickly would you like to refresh the feedback? So yes, that's how each of these modules has some kind of configuration settings for you to set up.
Yep. Thanks. All right. Oh. I was a little bit too quick. Let me go to my own screen.
Sorry, I'll punch.
That's okay. I was just. I'm actually not using
switches.
I'm actually not using any Stream Decks or something today, for some reason. Let me just say it out loud. I updated the software, and then it doesn't work anymore. So it's like, okay. So I better go to central control, and then everything would be fine.
Yeah, yeah. I'll make no comment as to the quality of the Elgato application.
Exactly. Just let's not talk about that. um, MT says, will it run on Raspberry Pi or does it require a regular PC?
Yeah, sure. Present versions of the application, it is running on Windows, just Windows at the moment.
Okay,
And
sounds
you can
good.
infer whatever you want from at the moment.
I understood. Also, thank you very much for this nice URL, MT. Appreciate it, putting it into the chat so that people can actually also find you. And we'll definitely, maybe talk about that later as well, because indeed a new version was out. Another one from Mike. Can you please explain what unlimited device instances mean as it pertains to a license? So I'll
For sure.
just keep it to you. There you go.
Sure thing. So you can see in this project, I can't count them. Well, I could if I could be bothered to, but there's many, many modules in this project. That a module is, we would refer to, a device instance refers to a module in the project, an instance of that module, a device. So I know in the intro version, it is limited to, you can have 5 modules in your device, in your project. So that could be an instance of vMix, the ATEM, an X keys, and maybe some kind of audio control surface. That would take you up to 4 device instances. Pro, Elite, and Neo, which I'm sure we'll get into, is they are unlimited. Like I'm doing, I can just, as much stuff as I need to control, I can just keep adding them to my project until my computer runs out of steam. But it's, I should say, the application is very lightweight, and I doing all this at the moment is probably using what, 0% of the CPU. Where is it? Yeah, 0%. That'll do. Good result.
Yeah, exactly. Another question that I found was this one: what are some common hardware controllers methods for the control? Maybe you can also look at that.
Yeah, sure. I know for our vMix customers, I think the most popular integration that they're using is we've got full support for the Behringer X-Touch series. So the Universal, the X-Touch 1, the Extender, and even the Compact. And you can, we have actually, in that case, I did a video and we do actually have a template for that. But you can use these control surfaces to control the audio mixer in vMix. And the other thing we do is we don't really do activators. Like, you can manually do your feedback. In vMix you have to. In here it's automatically done. So stuff like flying faders, VE meters, buttons light up when the channel's on. That's all handled by central control automatically. I think the TriCaster in the Stream Deck is a very popular one. Stream Deck for PTZ controls quite popular as well, because we if your camera's NDI, we use that stream to take a snapshot of all your position presets. But a lot of people like that. But truly, it's the whole thing is so modular. Like, you can use it for whatever you want. Like, we've got a teleprompter built in, and I know people that have just bought this just for the teleprompter, with the added benefit that they can connect any. Yeah, because you'd be hard pressed to find a teleprompter that does NDI output for less than the price point of central control. And then, if you want to hook up a hardware control surface to the central control teleprompter, well, you've got about 100 options there already. So I can see why you might do that.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Also, thank you for the questions. One last question, and we're going to go into the new features of 3.1. MT says, can you save and restore configurations? I have in mind to set up i2ME and a separate for an ATEM Extreme, etc., etc., etc. So is that also possible, like profiles?
Yeah. Yes. No. Of course. You can very easily do that. Doubles. You just there's this gear icon here that has a bunch of options, and I can just come in here and I can save my project. I can load a project, whatever I need to do, and I could have a different project file for every show that I needed to do. And it's also for the vMix users, it's a great way to kind of separate the mapping from the vMix project. If you needed to send someone a pre-configured mapping template, you just send them this and they'd be on their way.
Gotcha.
So yes, you absolutely can save and load your your projects.
That's really awesome. All right. Okay. So So thanks for that. 24 hours ago, you released 3.1, the new and improved feature-rich central control. Actually, to be honest, when 3.0 was released, I was already quite impressed. But in my opinion, there was one, and I leave it to you what your sequence will be. But one really stood out, and is of course the new macro feature that you have. But let's give you the floor so that you have you can explain what kind of features that you can expect as of 3.1. Oh.
Yeah, and I guess what better place to start than the macro system. Typically in production, a macro has just been a list of commands, right? You start at the top and end at the bottom. It's very single-threaded, and I guess you'd achieve delays by putting a delay on each command. And I was setting up something like this in central control. Like, we didn't have a better solution until recently. It's like, add all your commands to a list and then add delays, and it's like, okay, this is awful. And I was making a tutorial video that involved this. And then I sat down to edit it later that night, and I was just staring at the timeline in the NLE, and I was like, "Oh, that's how macro should work, because I can drag stuff around, and I can see the time running over, from left to right, and this makes so much sense." So with that in mind, we've kind of taken that idea, we've gone to the world of nonlinear editing and ripped off their best idea, the timeline. And we're calling it flex macros. So it's another module in my project. I've just added, I don't know where it is. I've added the flex macros device to my project. I click this and I get this window that shows all my macros and kind of like a preview of what it looks like. I can even click to play them back here. Or I can recall them from any button we support, of course, Stream Deck, X keys, MIDI. But let's look how you would actually set up one of these macros. So here's an interesting one we had for NAB, which was are you familiar with the X keys, the large button thing they have, Petra, where you press it and it's just like a single button and it goes to their USB device. We have one of those set up.
Yes, I do. I do know it. I don't own it myself, but I do know exactly what you have. I do own a few X keys. You might know that, but most of them are related to the replay functionality that I use with vMix, but I also have the 60 buttons, etc. But really, there's it. I know which one you're referring to. It's a good one.
Yeah. So a lot of times people come by the booth and say, I use X, Y, and Z. Why would I use your product over that? And so we'd have them press this one button thing that would start playing back this whole sequence, which was like a entire tour of the application showing like our super source stuff, PTZ control, all the stuff we do, the teleprompter. And it was just like automating like a hyperdeck, an ATEM, vMix, a graphics system, here to record graphics, that was, the cameras, all of it. And it was like an entire production 2-minute sequence being automated, like it was a file, just a video file being played back. And initially we were showing it, when we would show it, we would switch the ATEM's output from being the multi-view to just the full screen program so people could watch this sequence. Mm-hmm. But we had to switch it back to multi-view because people didn't quite believe that we were doing, as we said, like, well, you're just playing me a video file. So we had to switch it back to multi-view so they could see like all the stuff going on behind the scenes. So like it readying the next input and loading the graphics. I don't have all the kits set up to show that today, but what I have done, I've set up a kind of a simple example of like an intro sequence for a news show. So I'm going to try and show you this as best as I can. I've set up a simple vMix project as well. Yeah. I kind of do with. You can kind of see what's going on there. So we've got the macro editor here. We've got a bunch of stuff. We've got a re-rack command, which is just going to get all our inputs in the right place. Then it's going to set up inputs on preview. It's going to start recording. But rather than me talking about it, why don't we just go ahead and we'll start with the bars, and we'll go ahead and hit play, and we'll see how this could be used. I'm going to hit play just in the user interface here, but this could be done from an X keys or a MIDI device, whatever you want. So let's hit play and we'll see this intro sequence roll out. So there's our music.
Yeah.
Set the mix, I'm on preview. and sting a go. It's automatically fading down the mix level. You can see, hello, my name's Joe Max. Welcome to Joe Max's news thing. Lose my graphic, started recording. So a lot for me to talk about there. A lot happened in a very short space of time, but that was kind of an example of something that would be very hard for me as a normal person to like say, oh shit, like I've got to do this and then fade down the audio levels and blah, blah, blah. There's a lot going on here. And that's where we really think this will come into use. It's for those short 10-second, maybe even sub 10-second sequences where it's just really, really difficult to have to, get a handle on all of the things that are going on. Instead, you can just lay it out in the macro editor. And it's intuitive, right? If something's happening too late, I can just drag it to the left, or if it's happening too early, I drag it to the right. It's just a very familiar interface to anyone who's been in production for any amount of time.
I think that this is really a fantastic feature. I literally have loads and loads of ideas already about it, and actually, well, I'm already trying it at the moment. And one thing that I have a question though is you say it's great for those 10 seconds, and I agree with that statement. But is it possible to add like a break so that you have user input so that it then can continue? Because then you have like all the automations just in one timeline, and you just have to break it and unbreak it a few times so that it continues. Is that possible as well?
Yeah, certainly. And actually, not intentionally is it possible. Like, it was something I planned to add into this because I thought that'd be really cool to have. But it turns out, because I can essentially, I'll show you how you create a macro, but because any command in the program is available to be dragged into the timeline,
yeah.
Well, it's just kind of as simple as I can just drag the pause macro command into the timeline. And then if I change that to this macro and I hit play, you'll see as soon as it gets here,
it'll stop.
So I didn't actually need to write it. I was already capable of doing that.
Great. Okay, so that is, I mean, for me, this is like the killer app, so to speak. I really, really like it. And let me see if there are some comments that are related to this. I do see the question of Boone about OS X. I think that we already mentioned that it was a Windows only system at the moment. So I think that it's not on the roadmap yet. Eric says how now flex macros that really different. I like the UI already. Timeline. Yeah. It's people are really saying it's awesome and great. Especially for timing. Yeah, I like that you can just drag and drop where you want it. You can actually extend or you can just do your timing in a very natural way, which is really good. And especially if go ahead, Joe.
In the case of the I showed there that I had a I'll drag it in. So this is how you do it. I'll just come in here and
yep.
No worries.
Coming.
So I've just
go.
These are all my modules along the bottom here, and I've just selected the vMix instance that we're using here. So in the case of like a fader move where we want something to happen over an amount of time, you can set the start value and the end value of that. So I had my music bed go from 100 to 60 in that opening sequence, and like not only can you just setting the length of the clips in the case of linear stuff like this is what actually defines the length that the audio fade will be tweened over, and you can even set different curves and stuff. Sorry, I didn't want to sidetrack us, but I thought that was worth a mention.
Absolutely no problem. So that was the first feature that you had, and I think that that's already a killer feature. Do you have any other features that you want to discuss?
Yeah. So the flex macros is kind of the only new thing. There are actually some new modules. Like there's Stream Deck Plus, there's Millumin, there's a bunch of new modules. That's interesting. But the main other thing is kind of just some improvements we've made to other stuff. So we've had the teleprompter for a long time now. and a lot of people, as soon as that existed, a lot of people asked like, well, I actually like the teleprompter's running on another. I've got another central control machine that's running the teleprompter to the one I'm using to cut the show. So I need some way to remote control it. And it was like, oh, okay, well, you could kind of link up like HTTP requests to it manually, but then you've got no feedback. So what we've done is we've added into the program the teleprompter now has a remote API, and central control itself has a module you can add to remotely control the teleprompter running on another instance of central control. But I've also written a companion module, believe it or not, which should be in a coming version. So you can actually, because why not? Now you can use Companion and a Stream Deck to control our teleprompter, because people are just buying central control for the teleprompter because maybe their workflow's already all a bit focused, and that's fine.
Yeah.
There's no reason they shouldn't be able to control the prompter remotely.
Right.
There's a variable system which ties in quite nicely with the teleprompter. Let me see if I can set up just a quick demo. But what you can do is variables can be fed from a Google Sheet. They can be fed from Excel. You can randomize them. You can increment them, decrement them. And then you can like add in, you can evaluate that value in a command stack to say, okay, if you get to this point and the variable doesn't equal this, you're going to stop doing this. So that's like a great way to ignore maybe some trigger coming from a device, you know?
Yeah, it's like,
I think
it's like if then that situation,
yeah.
right? Yeah, cool.
Completely like that. I think my favorite use for the variables though is the way you can actually use them in a teleprompter script. So I'm just going to load up this script. I'm going to try and show you this live, which might be risky. But this is a script we made for a demo. I'm going to type in here %global variable 10. All right, that should be reflected in my prompter.
Okay.
And then what I've done is I've set vmix to show its, let's not do elapsed time, let's do remaining time. I can take vmixes for the, let's say I've got something playing back in the program. I can take that and I can assign it to a variable. And now I have done that. I'm just going to, let's make sure we've got the master muted because we don't need to hear this playing. I'm just going to loop this for now. And now, in theory, in the teleprompter, you can see, right, there it is, yeah?
Yeah.
I've got, I've managed to bring that variable into the prompter's output that the talent's presumably looking at. So now I could just use that as a simple way to show them how long is remaining in whatever video we've got playing back.
That's really cool. that's really useful even. So yeah, especially like you might not know, but I also work in the local TV stations, and we definitely have like news programs, so to speak, and this will be very vitally important for them later. So this is definitely something that I will put on the list of using that right there. Let me see. There was a question, but we have to go back to the Flex macros for a quick question.
Yeah.
Can you use Flex macros to control lighting as well?
Yeah, we can send DMX straight out of central control, but typically it's more likely that you'd be using central control to connect to a proper lighting console that can actually properly control lights rather than just sending values.
Yeah.
So I actually use this myself. I occasionally do lights at the local nightclub, and I've got like a launch pad off to the side that has a bunch of Flex macros on that when I press it, it will like set the position of all the lights down, fade them off, and then fade up the master output of Resolume to with the media server to show some visuals on the back wall. So I've been playing a lot with different uses for it, even outside of television production, certainly.
Sweet. Another question that's about PowerPoint. Can you start, stop, and pause PowerPoint?
Yeah, we've got a PowerPoint module. The one caveat to that is because of the way PowerPoint works, it does currently have to be on the same machine as PowerPoint. But yes, you can control PowerPoint with central control. Yep.
I was already thinking, of course it can, but okay. All right. So those are like the top 3.1 version features that we have. Um, very impressive. But what's also interesting was that you actually, apart from the tiers that you already have, you also launched Neo. Can maybe elaborate on that?
Yeah, there had been a want for there to be a kind of, maybe you've got a license of Elite and maybe you need to add a teleprompter just for one production and you don't really feel like paying for another Elite license as cheap as it is.
Hmm.
Well, now there's a monthly subscription option where you can essentially get the top tier version for just $14.99 a month, $14.99. And I have to stress, we haven't taken away the perpetual licenses. I would never have done that anyway, but especially after watching the recent events that happened at a very popular company that makes audio plugins.
Yeah.
I was especially convinced that I would never do that, and I'm sure some of you know what happened there.
Yes, I know
So
exactly which
it's
one
a
you're talking
choice.
about. Yeah.
Yep, it's a choice. Like we're not pushing you to subscription. If you want to go the subscription route, great. If you want a perpetual license, fine, have it. But I think it'd be great maybe for people that just want to dip their toe in, and maybe also for people that have central control and they just need to add another one for whatever on a production. Maybe we just need one to put on the PowerPoint laptop so we can remote control it or whatever.
That
Now
makes
you can.
sense.
You can just pay $14.99 for the month. Cancel whenever.
Yeah, that makes sense. Just for a temporary license, it makes definitely sense. But indeed, you still have the perpetual licenses. Maybe you can also elaborate on that quickly.
Yeah. Let me pull up the webpage because I know we
Yeah,
did have some questions on that, especially the 5 device instances. I think that's probably the most frequently asked
yeah.
question I
Go ahead.
get about the licensing. So um, we start at $79 for what we call intro. You can have 5 modules in your project. Then we go up to Pro, $149. There's some devices in there that you don't get in intro. That includes our rundown system, which maybe we should look at in a minute. Flex macros, the new thing. And actually, this wasn't really publicly mentioned, but it does now have triggers, which previously was just an Elite feature. Triggers are like a way to like conditionally map stuff. So like when the preview row on my ATEM changes, if it's this input, do these actions. So a very useful way of handling automation between modules. And then Elite comes in at $249. It's got the teleprompter, a web remote, PTZ control, the command delegator, which is kind of interesting, and NDI output, which can be used for sending the output of the prompter, or like vMix video playback time code, or even our production clocks from Rundown. And then Neo is, for all intents and purposes, Neo is pretty much just a subscription version of Elite at just $14.99 a month.
All right. Can you indeed talk a little bit about the rundown system?
Yeah, and to do so, we'll actually start, bizarrely enough, in Google Sheets. So this came about when I was working on a lot of virtual events back in maybe 2020, 2021, and I noticed that more often than not, a someone producer, maybe they're corporate and they don't have television experience, so they're not using like Ross Overdrive or ShowFlow because they don't know what that is. They're gonna, and like no one on our team is gonna make the rundown. They're just gonna hand us some kind of spreadsheet. And just trying to keep these events on track was a nightmare. Like we had to just do crazy mental maths to figure out when stuff was supposed to be happening and this, that, and the other. So we introduced what we called rundown clock, which is this, and it's basically it pulls in the data from the Google Sheet and essentially presents it to you in this rundown interface where you can see the time until every event, how long that event is, the comment, even like a tag with a color. And you see we've got these nice production clocks down here which show us the time until an event. We haven't had any events yet, but this green one would show us how long we've been in the current segment for. And you can even use it, if I click create triggers, I can have it create triggers for me where it can essentially automatically fire events based on your based on time of day. And I mean, Petra, this might be perfect for you to automatically start that countdown timer. Don't know.
Yes.
But ever since we had this, a big request was like it was called rundown clock because it was just supposed to be like an advanced production clock, maybe a little bit better than what you'd get built into TriCaster or vMix. You know, more events than just start and end. It was just supposed to be an advanced version of that. But as soon as people started using it, they were like, well, what if I want to pause the clock? And I was like, well, it's not for that. But eventually enough people asked that I was like, okay, we'll make it do some kind of manual tracking. So that's exactly what you can do now. I can click this pause automation button, which is going to stop it from automatically jumping in to the next event. I can unpause the automation, so it's back to automatic. But in addition to that, I've now got this go button, which I can manually step through events, and it would fire the triggers. And the nice thing is if we're currently in an event, as you can see, I think we're 14 minutes away from our first one here. But if we were currently in an event, it would show in a lighter shade of red. It would show where we're supposed to be in the show, and the darker one is where we currently are in the manual tracking. And whenever I like, I can just click back to automation, go back to the automated tracking. Just that having the mixture of both gives you the ultimate flexibility, because I think the only thing predictable in live TV is the need to be flexible.
Correct. Yeah, so I am, again, very impressed, but I'm not all by myself. I mean, Eric also says there's a lot of stuff included. I am impressed, Eric says. And MT, great. Wow, nice demo about the timer in the prompter. Nice use of variables, but also, of course, the later the demo was also fantastic. So how do you come up with these features?
That's a good question. I'm still like a technical director. I still work on productions, Vision Mixer, I guess. And I like with the rundown clock came up because we were getting all these rundowns in Google Sheets, and it's like rather than moan at the client saying this is a stupid way to do it, I was like, okay, maybe we could do something with this. The teleprompter came up when me and Ollie, who works with me, were doing a shoot here in the studio, and we're like, we need a teleprompter. So I was like, all right, I bought a teleprompter kit, and we started looking at software, and we weren't quite happy with any of the ones on the market. So we wrote in a teleprompter straight into central control. And then it was like, oh, well, we've got central control already knows how to talk to all these different devices. What if hitting a certain line in the script could make something happen? And because it's just another module, you get all that for free. It's already in the application. And likewise, like controlling the prompter, we support loads of different controllers. I've got the X keys, little 12 jog shuttle with like a keycap set they made for me. And it's just like, it's the perfect controller for it. And it's not like we had to add that in. We already had it.
Perfect. Yeah, perfect. But also, if I would own a license, I own a license, you know. But if I would own a license and I have a feature request, how can I make that happen?
You can email us, contact@centralcontrol.io. There's also a contact form on the website. But I actually prefer, we've got a Facebook group which is very active. It's Central Control users on Facebook, and I kind of prefer these ideas to be mentioned there, because then there can kind of be a wider discussion about it, and other people chime in and say, well, actually, what if we did it like this? And it's kind of a nicer way to, it's kind of, I guess, crowdsourcing the features, and we kind of all think out loud together and come up with a solution.
Exactly, and also it's also like a voting system, because if there's a question that arises and a lot of people are engaged, then you already know that maybe not you don't know how you're going to solve it, but at least you know it's a bigger problem, because otherwise people will not react to it, I believe.
Yeah, it's, you know, if someone says I really need it to do this, if they send you that on email, it's like, you know, that's probably important, whatever they need to do. But if they post it on the Facebook group and loads of people chime in and say, yeah, I need that as well, it's just more likely to happen, because we're going to, of course, like, there's a limited amount of hours in the day, and we do have to prioritize the things that are needed the most. And I think, yeah, well, once the community gets its weight behind an idea, it's probably going to happen.
Sweet. Well, are there anything else that you want to demo today that we forgot?
Um, I think we've covered it quite well. If anyone wants to see anything specific that they've seen on the website, I'd be more than happy to discuss it. But I think this serves as a pretty good demo. I would suggest checking out the website because there's certainly a lot in here and probably too much for me to even attempt to demo today.
I understand, and that's also not required. Of course, you have your own videos that are really great, very interesting. But this was also a way for new people to know what you bring to the table. I think you did a great job at demoing it. It looked really awesome, and I'm really looking forward to it. Actually, to be honest, let me do a quick announcement because so I have been using this system for a few months now, but I actually didn't really use it for production purposes yet. Now, I am very. I have to put money where my mouth is. So what I'm going to do is, starting next month, and I will make sure that you guys that are watching will be part of that setup. Is I will be moving everything to central control. I will be using it also together with my vMix system, but also with the ATEM systems that I have here in the studio. And I will make sure that you know exactly how I did it. And this is also a little bit of a tutorial from my end. And this is just a way that I also want to learn it, but also together with you come up with a better solution. So that is definitely what I'm going to do the coming month, and I'm looking forward to do that. So, Joe, that's
Fantastic.
yeah.
I'll be watching. I'll be watching.
Uh-oh. Joe, Petra, you're doing something stupid. Okay, thanks. Thank you, by the way, MT, for putting this one into the chat. And this is Central Control. That is, I believe, the Facebook that you were talking about.
That's the page. I'll get a link to the page. Is good for news and updates, but the bulk of any kind of discussion happens in the user group, which I've just linked to myself now.
Okay.
I see a question there.
Yeah, I also see one. So this one that you saw, I see a web panel mentioned in Central Control website.
Yeah, so you can absolutely do that. With the web panel, you basically build out. Let me see if I can pull it up. You build out layouts of buttons, and it's wonderful for doing stuff like handing off just a little bit of control to someone like a producer that's not maybe technically minded. So I can add a group of buttons here. Let's add that. There's some buttons. I'm going to add another view, which is like a page. And what I can do is when I give them, I can generate a URL for the page. And what I can do here is I can essentially select a view and lock them to that particular page. So maybe view 1 has got loads of like router crosspoint configuration stuff for like a video hub. And it would be nothing short of a disaster if some volunteer was to get their hands on that. Right. So I could very easily just lock them to the second page, which is maybe their controls for advancing through maybe a vMix data source, just something like that, so they could pull up the Q&A questions. I don't know. So yes, you can kind of. It's very good for volunteer-friendly control of your production.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that clear explanation. Mike says, good to hear you will be sharing how you're using it, Petra. I too need to start using it with my productions. Mike, that's good to hear. I think that we actually ran out of, but we actually had, I think that we discussed everything that we wanted to discuss. Well, thank you so much for your time, Joe. Really appreciate it. And looking forward to the next steps in central control. Now that everything is back to normal, I hope that it still remains to be in active development. Definitely.
All the best stuff happened after the pandemic.
There you go.
Like, that's when the best stuff happened, like, all the actual interesting stuff. So yeah. Cool. I hope so. Here's to the next 3 years.
Good, good to hear. Well, thank you so much, Joe, for the time
Thank you.
that you had on your Saturday evening. Is there anything that you want to say where you are on Facebook or where you can find you? Is that of course centralcontrol.io? We already know, but are there any other places that we might want to see you?
Yeah, for sure. The username on Instagram, Facebook is This Is Central Control. Joe DeMax on YouTube is actually where I post all the videos. And then on the website, there's a free trial. It's 30 days, equivalent to Elite. But if you download that, and if you send a request via the contact form saying that you saw it on Tech Condo, I'll extend it to a 60-day trial.
Ooh, there you go. Well, guys, now you found how to do it. This is, of course, also recorded on YouTube and Facebook, so you can actually see it later as well. One last question from MT. Are you going to be at IBC this year?
Looking that way. Are you, Petra?
Yes.
Fantastic. I guess I'll see you all in Amsterdam. Can't wait.
I'll see you in Amsterdam. Yes, I just got confirmation from vMix that I will be there again.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Awesome. So yeah, looking forward to see you there and hang out. Thank you very much
we'll
for
go
your...
speed bowling again.
Yeah, but you won. I didn't.
Oh, we did not. We got called out on the vMix Funtime live show for how bad we were.
Oh my gosh, that was so bad. But yeah, so speedball, guys, that's something else. So quick for the people that are watching. Speedball is literally the last like 5 minutes. You try to do as much as bowling as possible, so you're not thinking anymore. You're just doing it. You're just doing it, and then when the fun really happens. Eric says, "I am subscribed to Joe's YouTube channel right now." There you go. And MT is also going to go to IBC, and I now know how you look like, so I'll look forward to see you again. And indeed, bye. Have a great to have you. Yes, indeed. It's time to say goodbye. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for everybody for being here. I'm gonna say goodbye to Joe after the call. But yeah. Next week we have, of course, our monthly Q&A session. So if you have any questions about what happened last month, for example, about the ADCam strolling device that I talked about, the Netgear, the network switcher that I have right here. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about the Burdock Play and that kind of stuff. There are loads of questions that have been popping up last month. Use that Q&A session for that. You are in charge. Of course, I will be talking a little bit about my US visit. I will leave that for next week. I'm looking forward to talking to you next week, same time, same place, and have a fantastic Saturday. And I'm trying to prepare something because, of course, like I said, something didn't work out this morning, but we'll see each other next week. Bye-bye.